Hope not.
Just going to say good evening to those of you that are here. We want to give just a few more minutes for some of your colleagues who have said hello and have signed up, and we want to let everybody get into the room. So we're going to give it just a few more minutes, but we will get started right at 5:30. So fun. It looks like we've got some familiar faces in the audience tonight. I love it when that happens. As you step into this webinar, go ahead and make yourself at home, post to the forum. Let us know here in the chat. Maybe give us a little shout out about where you're from, where are you dialing in, so to speak, from tonight. All right. Mine in there too. Starbucks in Glendora. Martin, I like your style. That is a good feeling. All right, we've got Shatunda in LA and Elsa in San Gabriel, San Francisco, fantastic. Wendy, Chino Hills, that's so great. I'm so excited to see you guys coming from all over the place. We are really hoping that tonight is going to be a fun time together. We want to take a little minute and describe and unpack some of the key things that make college writing different. College writing really is a skill that you have to hone and refine and practice and develop. And it's not something that just because you are fluent in a language, it doesn't mean you can write in a college level writing way. And just because you are literate doesn't mean that your default mode is going to be to write like the researchers. So there are some tips and tricks that we have for you here tonight, and we're going to go ahead and get started with some introductions. My name is Tara Lopez. I am a student success manager, and that means that I get to serve the success coaches who are coming alongside so many of you. I'm also an adjunct faculty member I've been a part of Los Angeles Pacific for about 8 years now, and it is a tremendous privilege for me to see all of you doing the hard work of pressing in to earn your degree. So many of you are fitting it in alongside full-time jobs and families and volunteer commitments in the community, and y'all are difference makers, and it is an absolute privilege to come alongside you. I'm joined tonight by my colleague, Gordon Jorgensen. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey everyone, my name is Gordon Jorgensen. Please just call me Gordon. We're all adults here. I'm one of the assistant deans at LAPU, and I have been, I started at APU originally, but now I'm almost at 16 years. So I've been around a while, not quite as old as dirt, but close. I'm responsible for the liberal studies, information systems, and the associative arts and humanities programs at LAPU. And I also teach typically one course per session. I kind of go back and forth between ISTU 101, where I've had some of you in my class just last session. It's good to see you. And I also teach pretty regularly one of the math courses in the liberal studies program. I'd just like to echo one of the things that Tara highlighted already, and that is this whole idea of learning to write well is a process. And we know that everyone is at a different place on that continuum. And I just want to say, wherever you are, it's okay wherever you are. Our goal tonight is just to help you move one more step closer to becoming a better writer. Because one of the things that we've learned, and I've been in public ed and higher education now for a little over 30 years. And the secret is to keep working and keep practicing. You know, you get good at the things that you give attention and practice to. And so we just want to encourage you and say that it's okay where you are. And hopefully some of the things and the tips that we'll share with you tonight can help you get to that next level in your writing success.
Definitely. I'm going to just give us a little bit of an overview about what to expect tonight, so you know where we're going. We're going to just kind of unpack some of the things that come with why does it feel so hard to write academically. So get your thoughts ready. I'm going to ask you to engage in the chat. This is going to be an interactive evening between us here. And we're going to have a fantastic overview of basic essay format with Gordon. We're going to talk about how the writing itself is actually a little bit different. What are the characteristics of academic writing? And then we're going to leave you guys with some strategies and a little bit of guidance to help you get better at writing. So why don't we go ahead and dive in? I'm imagining that you're here tonight because you might have some feelings about writing. I know, having coached students for over 8 years in this place, there's a lot of feelings about coming back to college in general, and that is perfectly normal. It's perfectly acceptable too. But I want to just kind of talk about the elephant in the room. So I'm going to ask you to share, maybe a little bit vulnerably here with us in the chat. I want you to type in, when you think about writing, think of an adjective. How does it make you feel? One word is super sufficient if it works for you. I don't need a paragraph. I just want just those like visceral responses. When you think, I have to write a 5-page paper, what do you think? Scared. Thank you for being brave, Wendy. Absolutely. There's something about it that feels time consuming. That's a good one, Elsa. It can stir up emotions, and sometimes even those emotions get right in the way of beginning our process. You know, Jessica, lost. That is so good. To be able to identify some of those emotions that you're feeling about writing a paper, that's a really big thing. Biblically, you see a precedent where Jesus is saying we got to put things in the light, because stuff that's in the dark, all we got to do is bring it into the light. And then like God is able to actually take these things and help us make what is feeling dark something that is true. He can take something that is a lie and he can correct it in our lives. And so I think it's really helpful to think, when I think about writing a paper, I feel scared. And it doesn't do any good if we ignore it. When I think about writing a paper, I feel lost. It leads to things like Martin's saying, procrastination. Absolutely. And you procrastinate it maybe because you dread it, because you feel scared or lost, or like it's going to take a whole lot of time. You guys are giving great answers. Thank you so much for engaging. I have one more question I want you to think about. You just preempted my question, Martin. What are some of the reasons why it seems hard to do this? Why does it seem hard to write for college? When you're sending a text to somebody, does that feel hard? When you're, sending a Christmas letter, does that feel hard? What are some of the reasons that college feels hard? And I definitely think procrastination, or you get a little lazy. Or, Martin, I'm gonna give you a leg up here. It might not be laziness. You might just be tired. Maybe you've got so much other stuff happening in your life. And like Elsa was saying, the time-consuming piece of it is that you're already giving so much here and giving so much there. Michael, that's fantastic. It's hard because organizing your thoughts isn't super easy to do. It's a learned skill. It is a learned skill. And so I want to set our expectations for tonight and for your experience in college writing. Oh, Elsa, I love this one. It's a little overwhelming with all of the requirements. Absolutely. We're going to talk about some of those strategies tonight too. Putting words together correctly. Absolutely. Some more strategies are coming for that as well. So I love the things you guys are putting on the table, because these are things we're going to get to talk about tonight. But it's kind of like this, y'all. It's rather like deciding that you want to lift a certain amount of weights, and you might say, I have a bicep, I can just pick up weights and pull them. But it's not quite as simple as that. If you want to get something really, impressive, something not everybody can do, kind of like a bachelor's degree, then you might go to the gym and you might hire a personal trainer, and you'll dedicate time, and you'll dedicate every day focus to that particular set of exercises. You might even change your nutrition, because that's going to impact your overall success and results. And writing is no different than that. You can pull people in around you who are experts at it. You can adjust some of the ways that you've thought about it. You can set yourself up for success with a few key tactics and strategies, but you're still going to have to put in the effort. There's never going to be a moment where you're going to think, I don't need to do it. I just need to picture myself writing the best paper possible. So I want to encourage you. It takes work, and that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. Okay. So with all of that in mind, and again, thank you everybody for sharing openly about your feelings there. Gordon's going to take it off with some of the answers to the questions that you need.
Thanks, Tara. One of the, are you getting feedback there?
I'm not.
It sounds kind of odd on mine. Okay, no worries. I think that one of the things that I would like everyone to kind of hear in the background from me is that when I'm giving these hints, a lot of this stuff is not some earth-shattering, fantastic new idea. So please don't be surprised if you've heard some of these things before. And I also want you to know that most of what I will talk about tonight is from my perspective of being an instructor. It's not from my perspective of being an assistant dean. I will tell you, as an assistant dean, I almost never interact with students over writing difficulties or writing issues. Sometimes I interact with them when we have cases of plagiarism, but other than that, I'm going to be speaking from my instructor hat. So to start that off, one of the things that you really want to try to be clear on is, what is the point of the essay that you're about to write? It doesn't matter what course it's in, there will always be assignment instructions. We try really hard at LAPU to develop all of those requirements and instructions to be clear, to be concise and not be 5 pages long. But we try really hard to make it clear so that when you read those, you understand exactly what the purpose is of this essay. The other thing that comes with an essay are requirements. How many words does it have to be? Does it have to be a minimum length of words or a maximum length of words? Are there citations required in the essay or not? Some of the essays that you'll write here at LAPU will require citations, some of them won't. It just depends, but all of those things are in the requirements. And so it starts off with making sure that you read and understand the prompts. Typically, there are several prompts for each essay. And one of the tips that I like to give students is this: when you're talking about the structure of an essay is made up of paragraphs. And so if you see an essay that has 3 prompts, you want to have a separate paragraph for each one of those prompts. The other thing that you want to do is go to the course syllabus and look at the rubric for that essay. Oftentimes, I think students don't look at the rubric until after the essay gets graded, which is not a good strategy. We, as an assistant dean, I ask and require the folks that teach for me to grade your assignments according to the rubric. That's why we give you the rubric, so there are no surprises. You'll never have to wonder how you're going to be graded on any essay in any course at this university. And so that's why we provide the rubrics ahead of time in the syllabus, so you know exactly what the measuring stick is going to be, whether that's what you have to write about in terms of the content, whether that's the quality of the writing and syntax and grammar and mechanics, and do you have enough citations and all those different things. All of those requirements are in the rubric. I would even go so far as to say, print a copy of the rubric and sit it down right next to your computer, all while you're working on that essay. Whether that's brainstorming, writing an outline, writing the draft, editing your draft. When you get to your final copy, I would always have a copy of the rubric with you. And then the last thing is, there are going to be times when you're not going to be sure exactly what exactly does that prompt mean. I'm not 100% sure what they're asking. If that's the case, ask your professor. You can chat them through the course. You can email them through the course. They will give you their contact information. If you've been in one of my courses, I give my cell phone number. I don't care if you call or text me on my cell phone. I would much rather you be able to ask your question and me to give you a quick answer than for you to keep scratching your head and saying, man, I'm not sure what that prompt really means. So please start well, make sure you understand the prompts, rubric, ask questions if you have anything to ask for your professor. As you get into the writing process, one of the things that you have to do is you have to set aside time to actually think about it. And that's a hard thing to do, especially for all of you who are adult students working full-time, taking care of a family, a significant other, trying to have fun once in a while on the weekend. Time is a precious commodity, we know that. But I'm challenging you now to spend some time thinking before you write anything down, because that will help you gather your thoughts around what the prompts are asking. One of the things that I suggest to students is keep this phone next to you while you're thinking, because you can go in there and text yourself. You can use the notes function in your phone to jot down some ideas, because I don't know about you, but at my age, I forget things if I don't write them down. And so I always am putting in notes to myself about this thing, that thing, or another thing. And that's a good thing to do, is to put the notes or the thoughts that you have, because you might be out and about somewhere at a kid's soccer game or a little league game, and you think of something. And if you don't write it down, chances are you'll probably forget by the time you get home and get settled and start working on your schoolwork. Next, you want to gather research. And what I mean by that is all of your courses will have reading assignments that are connected to your essays that you have to write. There might be videos or other presentations that are in the course that will help you gather your thoughts and get the research done that you need. And then comes the first action step, and that's to create an outline. I'm sure we all have heard and have done an outline before, so I won't go into the details of that. But writing an outline is one of the most important things to help you do two things. The first and most important is it helps gather all those thoughts into one place, one sheet of paper or one page in your word processor, wherever you want to, whatever works for you, do that. The second thing that an outline will help you do is help you balance the essay. One of the things that happens the most frequently when students have trouble with writing is they write a lot of information about the first one or two prompts. And then they realize, holy smokes, I'm up against the word count. I only have like 60 more words before I'm at the 1,000 words. And they write 3 or 4 sentences about the last two prompts. And so now their essay is really out of balance because there's too much information about the first two prompts and too little about the last two prompts. So the outline helps you balance everything. Once you have an outline, then you're ready to start looking at how am I going to set up my essay. And this slide shows you kind of the basic format of any academic essay. You'll want to have an introduction that contains your thesis statement, what the paper is about or what you're going to be addressing in the essay. And then you'll have some other paragraphs that make up the body that help support your answer or help answer the prompts that were in the assignment instructions. We have 3 listed here because 3 is kind of like the most popular number of prompts in a typical essay. But as I said before, if there are 4 prompts, make sure you have 4 paragraphs in your body. If there are 3 paragraphs in your body. The one thing that you don't want to do that I see a lot of is have one long essay that's just a single paragraph. And now as an instructor, I'm looking all over the place to find out where are the transitions between the first prompt, the second prompt, and the third prompt. So the structure is important. And then at the end, make sure that you sum everything up with a thoughtful conclusion that draws all the things together and directs your reader back to how you've answered the thesis at the beginning. What did you say in the body of your essay that helps answer the thesis statement from the introduction? Okay. Let's take a little quick stop. Does anybody have any questions right now? Please, if you have a question about any of this stuff along the way or something that's even unrelated completely, you're welcome to type something into the chat and we will stop and answer. We don't want anyone to feel like you just have to be quiet because I'm talking, because if you haven't figured it out, I sometimes talk a lot.
Yeah.
At least that's what my wife and kids say.
We definitely do want to answer your questions. I remember when I was learning to write, I felt frustrated that I couldn't just start with an outline. And Gordon mentioned talking into your phone or whatever, but sometimes it's like drawing a mind map of all the different topics, and it's very messy. And it's not always tidy to start. I mean, we've got nice bulleted points for you here, but I want you to be encouraged with the fact that Sometimes you just got to get it all down on paper. Everything you think you know or have learned in your class about that topic, just get it down on paper and then move it. And eventually you'll find themes and order and be able to bring these things together. But don't be afraid if it starts off a little bit messy. It doesn't look like we've got any questions. So maybe you want to go on, Gordon?
Sure. Yeah, for sure. We need to go to the next slide, though.
Oh, sorry. I got distracted because Michael did say, are there resources that help you write better?
Yes, we're going to share a bunch of resources at the end.
Yes.
So one of the things that happens quite frequently with lots of essays that I read here at LAPU is there is no thesis statement at all. The student will just start responding to the prompts at the very beginning of the essay. And so that's not the worst thing that could happen, but remember, we want you to write with this basic structure: thesis, body, conclusion. That's the structure that you always want to have. And so this thesis is really a short paragraph. You don't need to say, in this essay, I am going to discuss. That's a given. I already know that you're going to discuss something in the essay because you're writing the essay. So you don't have to be overly detailed in the thesis statement. It just needs to be a short paragraph that's going to cover what you're going to discuss. What are the prompts that you're going to answer? It should be supported with a little bit of specific evidence. And then you're going to probably almost repeat the thesis again at the end of the paper when you write your conclusion, because you're going to tell the reader, which is one of us who are the instructors, how you responded to that original thesis, how you supported it. The source there that's at the bottom of this slide, the Purdue Owl. Owl is not a hoo owl. It's an acronym for the online writing lab that that Purdue University puts out, and everybody in the country uses this resource. So please copy and save that into the favorites in your web browser. I cannot tell you how often you should use the Purdue Owl when you're writing an essay. You should probably have it open all the time because you're going to find loads of useful information in there, from how to write a thesis, what a sample thesis looks like, how to use citations, how to do APA formatting to get the formatting just right, how to do the references page, how to do a title page. All those things are at the Owl site, which is why we have links to it all the time. I want to just take a quick break and answer Martine's question about, do you need a thesis for abstracts? The thesis is going to be contained in an abstract, because the abstract is a summary of what the essay is going to be about. I will tell you, though, most of the writing assignments at LAPU do not require an abstract. Some of them do, but most of them do not. Abstracts typically are only required with longer essays that are over 5 pages, really, really in-depth type of essays. So I wouldn't be too worried about an abstract. Okay. Here at LAPU, we only use APA formatting. It doesn't matter which course you're in, we only use APA. So you're going to want to start getting yourself familiar with APA formatting. The first piece of that formatting is that you should have a title page for every essay that you write, ever. And the reason for a title page is partly because of the format requirements, but the main reason is we want to know what the essay is about and who has written the essay and for what course and what assignment is this essay required. All of that information is on a title page. I teach ISTU 101 pretty frequently, and that's the first course that many students take in their first session at LAPU. Some of you have been my students in ISTU 101, and I actually just share a sample copy of the title page just because it makes everyone's life easier on how to get it centered and what information is there. But there also are templates that you can find, APA title page template. You can Google it and probably get about 1,000 different samples. But you'd be surprised how many people turn in essays with no title page, even though it's in the requirements. Essays must have a title page. So those things are important if you want to earn the most points on an assignment, because they do cost you if you don't include them. Citations. Let's see. If you are doing research in your textbooks, in your course materials, on the internet, anytime you use someone else's information, you have to cite it, you have to quote it. Intellectual theft is one of the most serious things that you can do wrong as a student. It's the big no-no when you're in college. And so what I tell everyone that ever asks me, if you even think that maybe what you think is what somebody else already wrote, just cite it. It's much better to cite it and give the attribution to the original thought person, the original author, than to try to use it as your own and get caught after the fact, because that usually brings with it consequences. Okay, so we don't want to go down that road. The other thing I would say is when you're writing an essay, you don't want to have too many citations. Some students sometimes ask me, well, how much is too much? I would say if 1/4 of your paper is in citations or less, that's a good number to go by. If more than 1/4 of your writing is made up of citations, now the citations are competing with what you've written. And that's not what we're asking for when we want you to write an essay. I want to know what your thoughts are on paper. And so 25% is probably a good target. But don't feel like you have to have at least 25%. It's just an arbitrary number. The last part of an essay is the references page, which is where you would list all the different places that your citations have come from. Martine has asked, do you cite the Bible and other biblical books? In the body of your essay, absolutely you cite it. So if you want to quote John 3:16, then you would put in parentheses at the end of those sentences, John 3:16. And that's all you have to do. Actually, the Bible does not have to be listed on a references page. And the reason for that is because the Bible is a classical work. So everybody knows when you put John 3:16 where that reference is coming from, because it's such a widely used book in the world. And so if you have any questions on how to construct an in-text citation or how to make your references page, the Purdue Owl site has all the examples that you ever will think of, whether it's a TV show or a magazine article or a web page or a movie. It doesn't matter. There will be a citation sample for everything you can think of at the Purdue Owl site. The Torah or other religious texts that are classical works would be the same way, Martine. You would not have to cite them in the references. All right, let's go to the next slide, Chair. Oh, I thought
That's the basics.
I'm sorry.
I actually need to correct the link that I just gave you guys. I accidentally typed the Chicago reference manual in there. So give me 1 second and I will fix that.
You want me to grab it while you're going on?
That'd be amazing. Thanks, Gordon.
Got it.
So, I mean, Gordon's given us like the basics of laying out the essay, because honestly, if you know what the structure is, I mean, it's kind of like building a house, right? Like you're going to go in and, Gordon, you do this all the time. When you're building a house, what's the thing you start with?
You have to have a plan.
A plan. You got to have a plan. You don't go pick out paint and tile first, do ya? You got to have a plan. And that's what the outline is. That's what understanding the assignment is. And now we're going to talk about some of the more decorative items, some of the, the more specific words that you're going to use and how you're going to communicate. So this is less structural and a little bit more how to do it. What are the characteristics of academic writing? So there's a few key things to keep in mind. You may or may not have noticed that you have a lot of words. I like to use a lot of words. And so for me to be an academic writer, I had to work really hard at becoming concise, of learning how to write brief sentences without a bunch of caveats or, commas or exceptions. My instructors had to really teach me to just put one thought into each sentence. Don't try to add a bunch of ifs, ands, or buts to a sentence. Say one thought and then actually use a period. And it's amazing how much in our society we don't do that very well, because we always have one more thing to say or one more thing to add. We don't use punctuation when we're texting each other, really. And so this is a skill that we really have to hone. But the thing that will happen when you learn to be concise is that you'll avoid run-on sentences. Your writing will be clearer. I think a lot of times people wear it sort of as a badge of honor. Forgive me if I'm going to offend somebody, but they'll be like, yeah, I BS'd my way through that paper. And I remember people talking about that when I was in college. And I think, that's not what I want out of my college education. I want to be able to emerge with the ability to make an argument, and an argument that makes sense and that is supported, substantiated, and therefore respectable. And so learning to be concise, it means we're not just adding a bunch of filler words so we can hit the word count. It means that every word we're using really matters. I think in a presentation like this, you appreciate that, right? You appreciate it. Even if I bring in some imagery and some metaphor and some language for examples, my primary way of communicating with you is concise. So it should be in a paper. Say what you mean what you say, and that will communicate your point very, very well. The next thing about a paper is that it needs to have proper grammar. And I think that's one of those things that feels very mysterious. If you will limit yourself to just saying one thought per sentence, then punctuation becomes much easier. And so use punctuation correctly. You want to be really careful about how you're using commas, because most often people misuse them. You think you're supposed to put it in every place where you take a breath, and that's not exactly right. So use your punctuation correctly, and that also is a skill that you will hone. Your word processing has a grammar checker built into it. I guarantee you it does. Make use of that tool. There's another tool we're going to tell you about in a little while called Grammarly, but there are things where we might not remember 6th grade grammar, but we can absolutely use these tools to write papers. The other thing you want to do in being proper in academic writing is avoid slang terms or words. You want to avoid being very, very casual. You want to avoid conjunctions, words that combine other words. So words like can't or won't or didn't. You want to be able to say, the research does not display that. You wouldn't say the research doesn't display that. Those sorts of things matter because they elevate the formality of your writing to an academic standard. And then the other thing is to capitalize properly. You'd be amazed at how Sometimes you just forget to capitalize things like I, because we'll send texts all the time where we don't capitalize I. But proper nouns are supposed to be capitalized, and first sentences, the first letter in a sentence is supposed to be capitalized. And that helps. All of these indicators, they seem nitpicky, but Gordon pointed out something that's so spot on a little while ago. Your job in written communication is to help someone else track with your ideas. I mean, think about it for a second. How wild is it that we can stare at bits of tree with markings on it, and suddenly what was in your brain is now in my brain? That's crazy. But that's what we're doing in the act of writing. And so the things like capitalization, they tell me when you're changing thought, or when you're giving honor, or when something is officially titled. All of those things, they add up and they matter. They make you a better communicator. The other thing that academic writing is that it's very clear. It's very direct. It's directed at your audience. And it's also very literal. It's not poetic. There isn't a lot of imagery or metaphor or flowery language. That was, for me, one of the hardest things to overcome, because I love words. And I think images, one of my top 5 strengths is connectedness. If y'all are familiar with StrengthsFinder as an LAPU student, I hope that you are. Connectedness folks love to see how things work together. And so I often will understand things through imagery. For example, like writing as an exercise and how that actually improves as we give effort and attention to it. Or constructing an outline like building a house. These are images. These are metaphors for the things that we're doing here. In APA writing, it wouldn't be particularly proper. You can do it, but you got to be really, there's got to be no better way to say what you're saying. And that's not often the case. So you want to, when you're writing research, you really want there to be just direct, clear, literal language. That's the goal. Now, I'm going to take a minute here and say, there are some things, like Gordon has referenced the class ISTU 101 a couple of times. I teach that class too. And there's a lot of personal reflection that happens in that class. And those prompts will tell you there is an aspect of research to it, because you're informing your thinking, but they're not officially firm research papers, like if you're taking Psych 300 and research methodologies. And so understanding the assignment is so key to shaping what kind of language you're going to use. There will be times where you can use language that is metaphor or imagery. But if you're writing about someone else's research, that's not the time to do it. If you're writing about your own experience or your own understanding about something that has happened in your experiences, then I think that's really important. It's the thing that I want you to understand is that academic writing is different than conversational language. And you have to assume every single time that with your academic writing, you're going to have to edit. You will not just write a paper, click send, and walk away from your computer. If you're expecting to do that, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but that is not a realistic expectation of academic writing. You've got to reread it. You've got to proof it. And that's also why it's different. We don't proofread texts before we send them. You know, we don't always proofread emails even before we send them. It's much more casual. The other thing in the spirit of edit, is use resources. And these are my top 4 resources for you in your academic writing pursuits. The first one is free to you as an LAPU student. It is tutor.com. They will literally review your paper for you and 12 hours later give it back with markings on it so that you can make revisions and turn it in. This is somebody with a degree, somebody that has been down this road. You give them the prompt and your essay and you tell them, I need help with APA formatting, or I need help making sure my thesis lines up, or I need help making sure my sources are speak into this thing. You tell them what part of your paper that you want them to review, and 12 hours later, they'll have it back to you. So you have to build in a little bit of extra time. That means you can't rush in under the deadline, but they will help you at every stage of writing your paper, whether it's outlining, whether it's brainstorming, whether it's reviewing what you think is your final draft, and all of it is free. So please take advantage of tutor.com. If you don't know how to use that, go to your success coach. They can definitely get you there. I mentioned a tool earlier called Grammarly. Grammarly is an app that you can download that scans for common grammatical mistakes like misused commas and complex ones like passive voice or just various other things that always come up in writing. And Grammarly, they have a paid subscription one, but they also have a free version. And it is fantastic. It'll put little red squigglies under the thing you need to pay attention to. It'll put blue squigglies under a misspelled word for you. It is actually so good. So Grammarly, please look it up. One of the ones that you're going to notice as a student also at LAPU is something called Our Original. And that is a fantastic tool because it is a free plagiarism checking software. And it makes sure that the ideas you're using are original. It'll give you an originality report. It'll say, 30% of this is totally lifted from somewhere else. And that should maybe give you a red flag, or at least go back and double check that the quotes that are matching to their report are cited properly. Maybe you didn't copy something straight off the internet, or maybe, students get in a hurry. And you do, and you think, oh, I'll go back and cite that at the end. You might not have a malicious bone in your body about it. You're not trying to be deceitful at all. But academic integrity is the law of the land, and it doesn't matter if you meant to or not. So something like Our Original, another one is called Turn It In. And these are fantastic resources for you to get someone else to look at your paper before you have to turn it in. Just like tutor.com, it takes a little bit of effort, but it is so worth it to make sure you're preserving and developing your own academic integrity. The last one we've already harped on, we've given you lots of links to, the Purdue Owl. It's my favorite. When I was doing my master's degree, I never wrote a paper where I did not have the Purdue Owl up on one tab and my paper up on another tab. It was chronically, constantly, always open. So it's a wonderful gift that Purdue is giving to the world with this online writing lab. And I wholeheartedly recommend that you bookmark it, just like Gordon did. Back to you, sir.
Anybody have any questions before we go into this last segment? All right, I'll get started, but if you want to type something in, we'll stop for you. So we've shared quite a bit of information, and one of our goals for the webinar was to not make you drink from a fire hose by providing too much information. And so we're not going to provide any more new information, but I did want to kind of talk through a few strategies, and some of these are reminders of things we've already spoken about on how do I improve my writing. The first thing that I want to go back to is create a process. You need to have a process that you follow that works for you. Certainly the process that we talked about earlier is, number one, making sure you read the instructions and the rubric carefully and do your research so that you understand the assignment, you understand the requirements of the essay, and then start by creating an outline and a thesis statement, and then start writing the paragraphs that support your thesis. And remember, a separate paragraph for each prompt in the instructions. And know always throughout this part of the entire process, this is a draft, okay? When you finish the draft, don't submit it to your instructor just yet. Read it aloud to yourself. Even read it aloud in front of a mirror. Sometimes that helps, believe it or not. it's kind of a weird, quirky, psychosomatic thing that personally I don't really understand, but I know that it helps. And as you read it aloud to yourself, you'll realize that maybe some things aren't sounding quite the way that you meant them to sound. And so you can edit and make changes. The other advice that I have for you is find somebody who will read it for you, whether that's a spouse or a significant other. It could be just a friend, a roommate, mom, dad, son or daughter, if they're old enough. But get somebody to read it for you, because you'd be surprised at how many times, and this has happened to myself when I've written in the past, when I think, okay, it's ready, it's perfect, it's ready to go. And I'll just take a few minutes to have somebody read it, and they'll say, this word here is not capitalized. And, and what happens is sometimes when you look at it over and over again, you just miss things. And so having somebody else take a look at your work can be a huge benefit to helping you improve. The next thing I would say is, and this is a hard one. I know that it's hard because I think generally we feel like it's not the easiest thing in the world to ask for help. And so I just want to encourage you and say, it's not too hard to ask for help. You just got to get over the hump by making that first ask. And I'll give you an example. Last session, I taught ISTU 101. A couple of you in this webinar were in that course. And, I share my phone number and email and all the different ways you can contact me at the beginning of the course. And so, I think to myself, well, texting is something just about everyone in the world does now, unless you live on a deserted island. Guess how many people texted me about that course during the entire 8 weeks? Put your guess in the chat. How many people texted me during the class? Probably the easiest form of communication in a course, because it takes more time to pull up the email. Wow, what a wide range from zero to everybody.
$1, Gordon, $1.
You'll give me $1. Oh, that's too funny. The answer to the texting question is Martine. It was only one out of 18 students over 8 weeks. And that's a little bit sad to me because there were some people that could have used my help, I will say. And so I just want to encourage you. Please reach out to your instructor, no matter what class it is. I love talking with students. I love to help students, but it takes them to ask a lot of the times to get that ball rolling. The other thing that I would say is you're always in a class with other people. Ask your classmates. It's really easy to get to know each other. Just put yourself out there. Say, hey, I have a question about this assignment. Can you help me? This part doesn't make sense to me. Or I have a question about this particular prompt. What does it mean to you? Because this is what it means to me. And see if you're on the same page. We already talked about proofreaders, other people that can help you. And then finally, you always have your success coach to ask questions to. Now, let me be clear on one thing. Your success coach is not a tutor. It's not somebody who's here to help you do your work, but they are absolutely there to help you find the best resource to help you. They may steer you back to your instructor. They may steer you to tutor.com, or they may suggest Grammarly or the Purdue Owl, but they're an invaluable resource to give you some ideas on how you can find the help that you need. So don't be afraid to ask your success coach. Probably the most important thing on this slide are those first 3 words. You do have to practice. You probably know this already as an adult, that you don't get good at things without practicing. Most people are not just naturally gifted writers. It's a learned skill that you have to practice. And the only way that you practice is by doing it over and over. The other thing I would say is that, we talk a lot at LAPU about growth mindset. We spend a whole week on it in that first course. Effort is super important. Your instructors will see your effort if you give it. Your instructors will work with you if you give that effort. I have never been more gracious in my entire life than with students who keep asking over and over again, how do I get better at this? How do I fix that? Because that is why I do what I do. My goal is to see you succeed as an instructor. My goal is to see you pass this class and the next class so that someday soon I can see you walk across that stage at graduation and receive your diploma.
The best.
Hopefully we get back to that. COVID will leave us. But that's why I do what I do. I want to see you reach your goals. And I know that your effort is a huge part of reaching that goal. The last thing I would say in terms of this are two more things. I'm sorry. Believe it or not, you will become a better writer the more that you read. And there's no reason for you not to read. If you have a phone, you can access just about any newspaper, any news agency, any library, your course materials, your textbooks in your class. I know that reading takes time, but if you will read more, you will become a better writer. And the reason for that is the more that you read, the more your vocabulary grows, the more you understand how to creatively and effectively use your words, the more that you get better at being concise when it comes to academic writing. It's a skill that you learn by practicing. It's really easy to write a run-on sentence that has, 4 different subjects and kind of goes on. And at the end of that sentence, I think more times than not, the student is just tired. They haven't stopped thinking about this subject, but they don't know what else to write about that particular thought. And reading more will help you become more concise as a writer, I promise. And then the last thing is super important. You will get comments in the rubrics, and you will get comments in the essays themselves in the margins that give you corrections on what maybe there shouldn't be a comment in that place, or maybe the wording is off, or maybe it is a run-on sentence that's too much for one sentence. But your instructors will put feedback in your essays all the time. Please make sure that you go back and open those feedback files, because you'll learn a ton if you'll do that, especially before you write the next essay in that instructor's course, because we want you to succeed. The most important thing that I hope that everyone understands by being in this webinar tonight is that we're committed to helping you succeed. We want to give you the tools that you need. We want to give you the assistance and the help that you need, because the bottom line is, we know that you're spending a lot of money. We know that you're spending a lot of time. We know that you're sacrificing things, that you're not going to family events and things like that because you have school to take care of. So we want you to be able to finish well and finish quickly, and to earn the degree program that you're in. That's the bottom line for us. Do we have any more questions? We got a few more minutes. Don't be bashful. Otherwise, I might start talking about something else. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
We have an outline, Gordon. We're going to stick to the outline, remember?
I'm not going to get wordy and give you a run-on presentation.
Just like that. The thing that I'll say too is, if you don't know how to see your professor's feedback, again, that's something your success coach can help you with. They can help you locate that, and they can send you a video on how to do that, or a PDF kind of guide to make sure that you know. 9 times out of 10, professors are giving you feedback files, And so you're getting more than just a grade. And if you don't know that, then you should be looking for it. And you should be asking your professor, do I have a feedback file? Is there anything else that I should be seeing? Because a lot of professors will use things like track changes, or they'll annotate, which means kind of make markings on a PDF electronically to show you specific spots in your paper where you can do that. Some professors even will leave you video or audio feedback, and those kinds of things are really helpful too. So pursue that feedback. I know it used to, when I was in high school, I think about many moons ago, how I would feel when I would get a paperback that had all that red marking on it and it felt bad, right? I think as an adult now, I think, oh, good. Now I know how to fix it for next time. But if you're not leveraging that feedback, then it's going to take you a little longer. So look for that feedback.
I posted a link to the doc. It's a Google Doc. Everybody should be able to open that. Tells you how to look at the feedback file. There are two parts to look at. One is the rubric. The rubric will tell what score you got for that part of the assignment, and it will have some comments. And then the second is this thing called a feedback file. It looks almost like the same file that you uploaded originally, but it's the one that will have the instructor's specific feedback in the margins. So you open that one to see the specific feedback that the instructor's given you. Yes, Martine, you can always text me.
You're so kind, Gordon.
There's a number again in case you don't have it still. You probably can still get in your other class, but there it is.
Put that on speed dial.
Anytime.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Martine. It's been a real pleasure to get to hang with you guys tonight. I hope that this was, just kind of a manageable way to think about making something a little bit more accessible to you, so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming, so that you don't feel lost, so that you don't want to procrastinate. Y'all were engaged and brave on the chat forum, and I'm so grateful for you in that. And Gordon and I will stick around for a few more minutes, but if you'd like to go, then you are released to go. So blessings on your evenings, everybody. All right, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the webinar. Have a great night.
See you later.